So I want to welcome everybody to another one of our bite-sized discussions. Welcome tonight and thank Debra Shifrin for joining us. Debra is a board member and an attorney with a law firm of Gertz & Rosen, and of course a specialist in SSI and benefits. So I asked her to come on tonight and speak with us because we've been getting a lot of questions about SSI, everything from the stimulus check information to people who need to go ahead and file for benefits, to all kinds of things that just because we've got COVID going on doesn't mean that the world has come, to a halt here. Oh, it kind of did, didn't it, though? I just want to go through a little bit of our format. This is bite-sized discussions are designed to be about 20 minutes of a presentation and then 10 minutes of Q&A. But please, you are all on mute. Please put your questions in the chat box, and Debra will answer all of those at the end. But like she just said, would be open to cover as many of your questions as possible. So we will try to get to as much of that as we can. And if we go over a little bit, Debra's already told me that's okay. I'm not sure if our bite sizes have actually hit 20 minutes. So as much as we've tried, this is being recorded, and you can find it on our website. I put it in the chat already, the link to it, along with all of the other bite-sized discussions that we've held. It's on our website at www.autismakron.org. I do want to point out one thing. Next week, our bite-sized discussion is going to be on Wednesday instead of Thursday, so that's a little bit of a change. It'll be with Dr. Jessica Emick, and it's parenting a child with exceptional needs through a pandemic. After that, on May the 15th, promoting positive behavior at home will be on Friday. So look for those on our website and register if that's something that would be of interest to you. So without further ado, I want to introduce Debra Shifrin, and thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you. Just to clarify, she said specialist. I'm not certified by the Ohio Supreme Court as a specialist. So how I put it is I emphasize my practice and limit my practice to representing the disabled before the Social Security Administration. So I wanted just to go through very briefly and then take a lot of questions, if possible. There's two major programs besides retirement benefits. There's disability, where you've worked 5 of the last 10 years. You've paid the FICA taxes through your paycheck every week, 2 weeks, or monthly. There is a 5 full month waiting period for disability. So that means if you're found disabled January 1st of 2018 is the example I use, it'd be January, February, March, April, May. Your benefits would begin June of 2018, and your Medicare would begin June of 2020, because you have to be receiving benefits for 2 full years. If, however, instead of January 1st, it's January 2nd, then your benefits would not begin until July of 2018, and your Medicare wouldn't begin until July of 2020. Disability, as of right now, can be paid 1 year prior to the date of your application. And the reason I'm saying is right now is, as always, Congress is debating and coming up with ways to possibly limit the benefits people can receive. SSI, on the other hand, is when you've either never worked or you haven't worked enough to where you would receive $783 a month in benefits. So you would have there, the benefits begin the month after the date of your application. So it doesn't matter whether it's the 1st of the month or the 30th or 31st of the month. Your benefits would begin. An example I use, let's say you applied in January 2018, your benefits would begin in February. There are strict income and resource limitations for SSI, and we'll go through that in a little bit. The definition of disability is the inability to engage in substantial gainful activity due to any medically determinable physical or mental impairment which can be expected to result in death or which has lasted or is expected to last for a continuous period of at least 12 months. And there's quite a number of terms in there that are very special and specific to Social Security, and also that have multiple exceptions. So in order to be found disabled as an adult, and this means anyone 18 years or older, you have to go through what's called the sequential evaluation. And the first question is, are you working? So when it says substantial gainful activity, that is defined in 2020 as grossing $1,260 a month. Each year it's changed and goes up. If you're grossing less than that amount, you are not considered to be working. And then earnings can be reduced if you have income-related work expenses, such as medication, transportation, someone who would help you drive you to work. So those are all considerations for defining whether or not you are working, and those come off to bring you perhaps below the $1,260 a month. The second question is, do you have a severe impairment? And to have a severe impairment, you have to satisfy all the criteria to meet a listing. And it's very difficult to meet a listing or to equal. For the example, I apologize, I pull up one. Working off computers sometimes don't work when you're sharing, so I apologize, give me 1 second. So the example would be such as for autism, which is, it's called the autism spectrum disorder. You have to have medical documentation of both of the following: qualitative deficits in verbal communication, nonverbal communication, and social interaction, and significantly restricted repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities. In addition, you have to have an extreme limitation in one or marked limitation of two of the following. And I'm going to give you the definition of extreme: more than marked. The definition of marked: more than moderate, less than extreme. So there really is no clear-cut definition for these terms, but the areas are understanding, remembering, or applying information is the first. The second is interacting with others. The third is concentrating, persisting, or maintaining pace. And the fourth is adapting or managing yourself. And so in order to satisfy the listing, you'd have to meet each of those elements. There are other ways to do it, and I've given here some what are called Social Security rulings, which are set forth by the Social Security Administration, and they're listed in the Federal Register on a regular basis. The one of Social Security ruling 17-2 sets forth the procedure for equal listing for any claims filed after March 27th of 2017. The listings, as I just read to you, those are listed in Part 404 of 20 CFR. And some rulings that usually people look at a lot these days, the newest one is headaches, obesity, diabetes, fibromyalgia, and quite a number of others. There is none for autism spectrum disorder because it's a listing. These are all for conditions that are no longer listings. The fourth question is, can you perform any of your past work? And you only consider jobs from the past 15 years, which were performed at that level of substantial gainful activity. So a part-time job where you did not earn much would not be considered. And the fifth question is, assuming you A, are not working, B, you have a severe impairment, C, it does not meet or equal listing, D, you can't do any of your past work. The fifth question is, are there any other jobs that a person with your limitations can perform that exist in the national economy? Now for children, which is those under 18, it's based on household income as well as disability. And I will go through, if you have questions, I explain. If the example I use for 2020, if only one parent works and there's one other child that's ineligible, at approximately $38,000, $39,000 household income, the child would not be eligible for any SSI. And then the child has to meet equal, and this is the different term, functionally equalistic. So there are 6 functional domains, and once again, we have the famous, you have to have 1 extreme or 2 marked. Limitations, an extreme meaning more than marked, and marked meaning less than extreme but more than moderate. So in other words, it's strictly gray areas. And it's acquiring and using information, which is how well does the child learn. And that usually, when you're discussing autism spectrum disorders, really does not come into play because most of the children are fine. But the ones that do are attending and completing tasks, interacting, relating with others, especially. Moving about and manipulating objects is more the physical. Caring for yourself would be an example, which wouldn't be in this, but that I've used is young women who cut themselves. That'd be under caring for yourself. Children who don't understand that you shouldn't play with fire. And the last one is health and physical well-being, which is really a catch-all. For SSI, the accountable resources, you could only have $2,000 in assets. Now that excludes the house you live in, 1 vehicle, life insurance policies with a face value of less than $1,500, a burial plot or prepaid funeral, household goods, and special needs trusts. And the reason the special needs trust there, or another one would be the stable accounts would also be excluded. And that's money that's put aside, but you cannot set up a stable account until a child is found disabled. The application is completed online. It used to be that you would call Social Security and they would do the application with you or schedule you to come into the office. And that was even before the coronavirus closed all Social Security offices. But now they want everything completed online. But the SSI is a paper application. So you have to complete the disability application online and the disability report, and then complete a paper application for the SSI app that has to be sent to the local Social Security office. And there's questions on the application, primarily about financial resources, who you live with, what kind of household income there is. And the process itself can be lengthy. You have an application. If you're granted, right now Ohio grants, I believe last time I checked, was about 85% of applications are granted initially. And that includes all the compassionate allowances and the cancers and those that would be automatic grants. If you're denied, you have 60 days in which to file a request for reconsideration. That generally is a rubber stamp denial, with 98% of the cases being denied again. You then request a hearing, where you have a hearing before an administrative law judge. And up until 2 months ago, those hearings would be in person in either Cleveland, Toledo, Akron, Columbus, Dayton, or Cincinnati. They are now currently being held by telephone, where the judge is home, the attorney's home, the vocational witness is home, the doctor's home, the client's home, and no one is with each other. The hearings will be done by phone. My understanding is through at least August 31st. So those people who do not want to have a hearing by phone are being told that their live in-person hearings will not be held until probably November at the earliest. If the judge denies the case, you appeal to the appeals council, which decides whether or not the judge's decision was supported by substantial evidence. And if that is then denied, you have an option of going to federal court. And here would be the United States District Court for the Northern District of Ohio. So that's my brief overview. And I thought it'd be more important to take questions to see what your concerns are. So if there are questions.
Unmute myself. Okay, everybody. Feel free to type any questions into the chat box. I will start with one that we've gotten quite a few questions on, the stimulus checks, and some confusion around, do you have to file if you're on SSI? Will that be automatic? And also folks who have minor children, dependents, and whether or not they'll receive a stimulus check. So what can you do to fill us in a little bit on SSI and stimulus checks?
If the person receiving SSI is under 18, the parent would receive the $500 stimulus for the child. If it's an adult, which is anyone over 18, the person automatically should receive the $1,200 stimulus check. And I believe you had to register your minor children by Monday or Tuesday of this week. And if you did, you would also be eligible then to receive the additional $500. Those should be automatically deposited in your bank account if you have direct deposit from the Social Security Administration. If you do not, I'm not sure when the checks will be written. I always recommend that everybody have Social Security checks direct deposit, for the reason that if the government shuts down at any time, if you receive a paper check, or even if you receive the debit card, somebody actually has to push a button to have the monies go into, have a check written or have the monies go on your card. If it's a direct deposit, it's automatically programmed and nobody has to do anything, so therefore you're guaranteed payments. So I always recommend that you have direct deposit from the Social Security Administration to a checking or savings account.
All right, I have another question too while folks are thinking of questions. We had someone ask us about, they have an adult son, who was working, and that had reduced, his SSI benefits, and then he was laid off due to the pandemic. And she's now trying, mom is now trying to get the benefits, increased because now he has lost his job.
Okay. Well, first of all, if you're receiving disability, and I'm going to separate these, as long as you've stayed away from that threshold of 1260, it doesn't affect you. If you are working and you're receiving SSI, however, for every $2 you earn, you lose $1 of SSI. So if you're no longer working, and hopefully it was a lower amount, notify your caseworker at Social Security. They are working from home, and if you have the person's name and extension, you can call, and if they don't answer, they will get back to you. They've been wonderful about that. The other number you could dial is 1-800-772-1213, which is the General Social Security Information Line, and they will tell you where to send the information regarding the reduced earnings, or that the person's been laid off, so that they can then increase the monthly benefit. But understand the maximum that you can receive is $783 a month on SSI.
Understood. That was some of the things I know that, questions that we've been receiving. What are some of the top tips that you would give parents? And I'm thinking of parents maybe of transition age children who are needing to file for SSI once their child has turned 18, in terms of process and procedures. And
well, the reason why it's important to wait till they're 18 is that 18, it's magic. A child is no longer financially dependent on you, and therefore they are eligible to file for SSI on their own, and it will not be based on the parental household income. So I always joke that I'd like to know the secret to how you have children emancipated at age 18, where you do not provide any financial support for them. And if you please drop me a note. Mine are 32 and 29, and I still provide some financial support. So just point that out. If you have a child, though, who is over 18, you want to have them file the application. Even if they're able to work later on, you can always dismiss. But especially in this economy where it's going to be harder, it's going to be worthwhile to file the application. one of the things people always think is that they have to pay an attorney to file an application for disability or SSI. The fee is actually set by Congress, and it's a contingency fee contract. If a person is not granted benefits, there are no attorney fees. If they are granted benefits, the fees are 25% of the one lump sum check with a cap of $6,000. So it's always worthwhile to request assistance from a professional, because they'll act as a buffer and interference between the Social Security Administration and you, and will ask you the question to present in a way that perhaps will lead to a quicker award of benefits. The other thing I would just always suggest is if you do want to hire an attorney, you want to double check and make sure that they're attending continuing legal education or Social Security. And I always recommend that you ask if they're a member of, we have a trade organization, that's what I call it. It's called the National Organization of Social Security Claimants Representatives, NOSCR versus NASCAR, but NOSCR, NOSSCR.org is the website. And anybody who does this on a regular basis will belong to NOSCR and will attend their nationwide seminars, which used to be twice a year. This year it's only going to be once. I am a past president. There are a few other past presidents of NOSCR here in Ohio. And the other question you always want to ask is, how many hearings has the attorney held? Because that's going to give you an idea of whether they stay current on the changes in the law.
Those are some good tips. It is complex, and I've been through it and made a number of mistakes. And so I admit that it is not necessarily rocket science, but it is not something we deal with every day. So I do appreciate your point there. Again, we don't have any questions in our chat box. So I don't know if everyone is...
Did I confuse everyone?
We've just covered everything really well. But I'll give just another moment. I'm just trying to think about it. I had a question and it flew out of my mind, but
I was just going to say the one thing I'm going to share for a second here, because I do have then, the one question that people always ask is the deeming chart. So just so, when I said about household income, the deeming is not just from parent to child when it's a minor child, but it's also spouse to spouse. So if one adult is filing for SSI, the other spouse's income would affect the ability to receive benefits. And Social Security separates it by earned income versus unearned income. So earned income is when I went through and I said, at $3,649 this year, if one parent is working, you have one ineligible child besides the child applying, that's when benefits would cut off. If both parents are working, it'd be $4,433 a month. Now I'm going to go though beyond that. If it's unearned income, which would be workers' comp, the parent is receiving Social Security at $1,998 if it's one parent. If it's two parents, both have the unearned income, it's $2,390. So there really is a very low threshold for SSI and to receive benefits. And that's why I was saying you have to be very careful. The key here though is for children, once they reach 18, that would not be a factor.
Any longer after that. Yeah, you showed me that table before, so it is at least kind of spelled out for people, what to expect in that realm.
No other questions?
I don't see anything. I think you've done a great job with this. Thank you. Again, I think that this is one of those areas I've heard from a lot of people that you might watch this kind of thing and go, okay, I got it. And then really when it comes time to do it, it really is kind of an intimidating process. Just add, someone had mentioned to me the idea to be sure.
I do see a chair. I do see a question.
I do see a quick question. Yes. Can young children receive SSI? So that's based on those.
Yes, as long as they're financially eligible, the parents are financially eligible. And that's where it goes to this deeming chart. You know, I always say, if you have any questions, send me an email, give me a call. I'm always happy to answer questions. I'd be happy, you know, this chart, I tried showing it to Lori earlier today, and the problem is it really doesn't come off well.
Yeah, it's hard to read.
Yeah, and it's because it's one of these things, it's called a chart of monthly deeming break-even points for federal SSI payment, and finding it is very difficult. So luckily I'm on a listserv where people who find it bring it and allow all of us to see it. But children at any age from birth to age 18 can receive benefits. Then at 18 they'd be filing for SSI as an adult.
And then not based on their parents' income anymore. So that's the real key. Yeah.
The problem is at least what I'm finding is a lot of the Social Security personnel do not understand the autism spectrum disorder. Mm-hmm. And doctors have been trying to educate them. But it's something that really is, that's why you need someone who's going to lay it out and really make it clear to the judge why this child needs the benefits, because they really do have functional limitations that prevent them from behaving and acting as a child of the same age.
And really, as you know, Deborah, from all of our conversations as well, we see that across so many sectors that there's just a lack of understanding. So often we get people seem to either think of the Sheldons of the world, or you know, it's difficult to really sometimes really understand autism, and someone can look like a Sheldon and still have quite a few impairments with navigating the world. So I think that's a point well made. The only other thing I was going to add to all of this is I have been told as a tip to ensure that your child's state ID is either get one or have it up to date. And I guess it's just because then they are, you know, sort of in the official you know, state records or something, but that was something that I was told to also do as part of this process. So, well, if there are no additional questions, actually we've done a fantastic job of having a bite-sized discussion. This is really the goal, is to keep it manageable. So I want to thank everyone again for joining us tonight. And as I said, you'll be able to find this recording along with other recordings on our website, which I've put the link right there, but it's autismakron.org. Have a great evening, everyone. Deborah, thank you again so much, and I will see you at our next board meeting.
Thank you.
All righty. Good night, everyone.
Good night.